And we are back one more time with yet more Horror Guys.
Episode 188 of the Horror Guys. I am Kevin.
I'm Brian.
And we're going to talk about some horror movies, aren't we?
How many?
4 horror movies and a short.
And we're going to spoil the crap out of all of them, aren't we?
We are, because none of them are brand new. Well, Snowtown Murders. How new is that one?
2011, I think.
Okay.
13.
We
I
can
don't know.
Spoil the heck out of these.
Yeah, we will.
So
what do we got?
So you are warned. You might not have seen them yet, but they're not fresh and new. We got the Snowtown Murders, a sort of based on true events horror movie that's crime drama. And we got the Blob remake from 1988, a cartoon, Extraordinary Tales, which are Poe tales, and Attack of the 50-Foot Attack of the 50-Foot Woman. I kind of spoiled my opinion of that one.
What did you say?
Attack of the 50-Foot Meh.
Oh, okay. Didn't care for that one, huh?
No. But we'll talk about them in depth. And we got a short there, too.
We do. And, of course, all of these, you can read the reviews, the full reviews at horrorguys.com. There's also a couple of bonus reviews if you go over to horrorbulletin.com, where this week we talk about the 1985 slasher film, The Ripper. Had Tom Savini in it, and he got the star billing, and he's in it for like 20 seconds of screen time.
And they've got... they've got a body double that looks like...
Nothing like him.
Nothing like the people that are in the movie.
Yeah, the Ripper runs around. You see the Ripper a couple of times, but
in shadows,
it's not him.
It's clearly not him, but then he is. At the end, he finally makes an appearance.
But we didn't hate it as much as it sounds like.
Overall, it was a watchable film.
Yeah, it's Tom Savini always apologizes for having done it. It's very much maligned, but it wasn't that bad.
No. Very, very 80s. Could it have been any more 80s with the dancing and the way they dressed and the hair? And
it includes a jazzercise video.
Yeah.
And then we also watched London After Midnight, the most anticipated lost film of all time.
And it's still lost, but they did a sort of recreation with stills and a story. It's not quite like watching the movie, but you kind of get the gist of it.
It's a movie from the, I believe it was a silent film from the 30s with Lon Chaney. And if you've ever seen him there with the big pointy teeth and the top hat, kind of hunched over in a cape.
Sunken eyes. His eyes are very...
He doesn't quite look like a vampire, but technically, according to the story, he is. But yeah, it's that guy. You've never seen the movie. I guarantee you've never seen the movie, but you've seen the stills of this character.
If you have a copy of that in your attic, you would be the hero to everybody.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But you probably don't, so you should watch this one.
You probably don't.
It's reconstructed from still pictures, and they took a lot of photos during the filming of it. And you can see him, and you can see the other characters interacting on screen. But it's all just
and they've got
photos.
The script, of course. Yeah, but
they got the script, so you can tell what everybody's saying. I believe there's the original music, even possibly. But you can get an idea of the full story by watching It's more than a slideshow,
but it's kind of more of a historical study than an entertaining film.
If you want to know what the story's about, you can check out the newsletter. Yeah. Actually, you probably do just as well reading my synopsis as you would be watching the thing. But if you're curious about it, it is probably the most regretted of all lost films.
Yep. That's
the character is so iconic looking and so cool looking, you just want to see his movie.
Mm-hmm. And he put so much work into it. And I understand those eye makeup things that he did was extremely painful, too.
Yeah, wire in his eyes.
Nobody ever gets to see it. Yeah, wire frames around his eyes, like kind of giving him a sunken look.
Yeah, 15 or some years later, I don't have the dates in front of me, they did Mark of the Vampire with Bela Lugosi, and it was essentially a remake. It was the same story.
Same kind of thing.
But it had words, and it had Bela Lugosi, and we can still see that one because it exists still.
Yes, it does.
All right, well, what else exists this week?
Books.
Okay, I was going to go to the movie. But
yeah,
we got books, too.
Okay.
Yeah, stop on over at horrorguys.com/books and pick up some of our much praised, wonderful texts.
Mm-hmm.
We have the Horror Guy's Guide to the Films of Vincent Price, the Horror Guy's Guide to the Age of Silent Films, the Horror Guy's Guide to Hammer films. All those Hammer films from the 50s and 60s. They're all, and 70s and 80s and 90s. And Hey, they made some in 2010.
They did.
It's got all the Hammer films in it. Mm-hmm. And, of course, then we got the Universal Studios with the oldie stuff. So stop on over at horrorguys.com/books and pick one up. Pick up all of them. They're good. They all look the same. They're a nice little library shelf. Yeah.
And the holidays are just around the corner. Perfect gifts.
Buy a set for everyone.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Well, what do we got this week?
Well, in 1958, there was an attack of a 50-foot woman.
I didn't read about that in the papers.
I didn't either. They must have hushed it up. It was directed by Nathan Juran, written by Mark Hanna, stars Allison Hayes, William Hudson, and Yvette Vickers. Runs a blissfully short 1 hour, 5 minutes.
Seemed longer, though.
I did it. And there's a trailer in the show notes. Black and white. Spoiler-free, there's not enough actual attack of the 50-foot woman. And it's kind of long and drawn out. The science is bad. Just bad. And without much explanation. And stuff just kind of happens. And the special effects are sporadic in quality. And all in all, it's pretty mediocre.
Now, Tim, would you say Attack of the 50-foot meh?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think so. Well, we hear on the news that there's a strange fireball that came out of the sky. The fireballs have been seen in various places around the world, and they predict the stranger from space will be over California at any time. And we see the fireball, and it's, what is it, a basketball? It's pinball? It's a round ball that has no fire on it.
Yeah, it's a floaty ball.
It could be a gumball for all we... Everlasting gobstopper from space.
A big inflated weather balloon, maybe. Not that it looks like that.
It really doesn't. The floating ball parks in the middle of the country road, making Nancy stall out her car. She screams repeatedly as a giant hand reaches down from her. Meanwhile, Nancy's husband Harry is making out with Honey, his girl on the side. He only stuck with Nancy because he couldn't get alimony. This was the 50s. Men didn't get alimony. Mm-hmm. No matter how worthless they are.
Mm-hmm.
He's high on the list.
It was always the other way around. Well, extreme cases. But generally, yeah, that's how it was back then.
Well, Honey suggests that Harry would get everything if Nancy died. Nancy has been admitted to the mental hospital a few times, so the two talk about hatching a plan. She doesn't drink anymore, but all she needs is a little help, says Honey. Well, Nancy runs to the sheriff, still screaming in panic. She insists that she's not drunk, but they don't believe her crazy story since she's hysterical. Really, I'm not drunk. Really, I'm not drunk. I saw a giant fireball and a giant hand.
Sure you
yeah.
did. Mm-hmm.
Well, Harry gives the deputy some cash to go away and pretend they couldn't find him at the bar. The sheriff and deputy do find Nancy's car on the road, but the giant ball is gone. As long as she's paying most of the taxes around here, we're playing along with her, grumbles the sheriff.
Yeah, she's mega rich, like the richest person in the county.
Yeah, they don't find anything, but she thinks it was after her giant diamond necklace. You always have to be Lucky Charms. Nancy goes back to her huge estate where Harry tells Jess, the butler, to scram. They fight about Honey. She knows, and he denies it. She calls him a miserable parasite who's only after her money.
She ain't wrong.
She tells him that she saw a satellite in the middle of the highway, and then a giant came out looking for her diamond. Amazingly, he doesn't believe her either.
It is a pretty hard story to swallow.
Harry puts her to bed and pockets her diamond, the most famous diamond in the world, the Star of India.
Which they made up for the movie.
Back at the bar, Honey tells Harry that she's tired of waiting. It's been like an hour.
Mm-hmm.
In the morning, Harry calls Dr. Cushing, who says that Nancy is suffering from nervous exhaustion. Nancy has calmed down, liquored up, and knows what Harry is up to. Just the butler looks on very judgmentally. Nancy hears her story told on TV, and they make her sound crazy. Actually, she did a pretty good job of that herself.
Mm-hmm.
She's possibly hallucinating the broadcast, though.
Well, she clearly was. They were talking to her. There was the TV talking to her. Yeah.
Well, she wants to go out to the desert and find that thing that she saw. Nancy and Harry drive all over the desert looking for the giant and his balls. They don't find anything, which proves... Okay, just one. Just one.
I see what you did there.
They don't find anything, which proves she's only fit for the asylum. Then, on the way home, they both see it. She runs up to the thing and beats on the side. The giant, bald alien inside grabs Nancy. Harry freaks out and drives away, leaving her there. Harry goes home, packs up his stuff, and is attacked by the butler. The two men fight, and Jess calls the sheriff. Harry goes to pick up Honey and leave town. Later, they find Nancy on the roof of the pool house. How'd she get up there?
A giant dropped her.
The sheriff, Dr. Cushing, and Jess the butler talk about Nancy's condition, and they think Harry assaulted her. Nancy has also been contaminated with radiation somehow. Honey thinks Harry should tamper with Nancy's medication and give her an overdose, if he has the nerve. He goes home, and we see that he does have the nerve, but when he sneaks into Nancy's room, he sees that she's grown huge.
Yeah, you're going to need a bigger dose.
The next morning, meat hooks and chains arrive along with an elephant syringe. They bring in Dr. Heinrich, an expert. Who's an expert on this?
Who's an expert on somebody who's suddenly 50 feet tall?
He wants to do surgery to figure out what's wrong.
Well, I think he was like a glandular specialist or something, because he spouts off a lot of, it must be a pituitary, or, we got to, well, your pituitary doesn't make you grow 50 feet overnight, but, whatever.
Well, the sheriff
we mentioned before, the science is bad.
Bad,
really
yes.
Bad.
The sheriff finds a giant footprint outside the house. The sheriff starts to think that maybe Nancy isn't a lunatic. The sheriff and Jess the butler decide to follow the footprints back to the source. They soon find the big spherical alien ship. They find a door and go inside. They find Nancy's diamond in there, along with a bunch of others. Perhaps they're used as a power source. Then they find the owner of the spaceship and hightail it out of there. The giant then destroys their car and leaves. Nancy wakes up, and she's not only huge, but she's also chained to the walls. She breaks out of the house and goes on a rampage.
It's Attack of the 50-Foot Woman at last.
Ta-da! She starts playing with the electrical lines outside Tony's bar, which is where Harry and Honey are hanging out. She attacks Tony's bar and scares everyone inside. Nancy drops stuff on top of Honey until Honey is splattered. Mm-hmm. She's flat.
Yeah.
She reaches inside and pulls out Harry. The sheriff shoots Nancy a few times, but it doesn't slow her down. He then shoots the big transformer on the power pole, and that knocks her down and kills her. Oh, and Harry's dead too. The end.
Pretty grim ending.
Sounded like a rushed ending, didn't it?
Yeah, it did.
Was. She was only the 50-foot woman for about 5 minutes.
And it was really anticlimactic when the alien just kind of, attacked
just left.
And left.
Yeah, okay. I'm done now. Bye.
Now. Yeah. Thanks for the diamond. Bye.
How did all of Nancy fit inside the bedroom with that big hand?
Yeah, we only see her hand in the bedroom.
And it's bigger than the bed, it's bigger than the closet. It takes up half the room. And how big is this room? It's like she sleeps in a warehouse.
Uh-huh.
We don't see the rest of her.
Not then.
There's literally zero science for anything here, so it just sort of all happens. The special effects are pretty chintzy looking, too, with both Nancy and the giant alien often being translucent. It's like they filmed them both against a green screen and then projected them on top of the other screen.
Poorly.
You
can see through it.
You can see through them, yeah. They're giant. They're not ghosts.
Yeah.
And many of the interactions are just with a giant hand prop. Yeah, there's a lot of hand in this one. Tell it to the hand, because that's all you really get.
Talk to the hand, because,
The acting here is pretty melodramatic and overwrought in most scenes. It's only an hour and 7 minutes, but it really feels slow and stretched out in places. There's just not enough at the 50-Foot Woman and too much soap opera nonsense. We really kind of hated it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
About a 3, I think it'd be. I'd give it a 3 out of 10.
Well, it all makes sense, so it ought to get a 3 or a 4, but that's probably about it.
Yeah.
All right, somewhat better is The Extraordinary Tales, an animated thing from 2013, directed by Raul Garcia, written by Edgar Allan Poe, Raul Garcia, and Stefan Rollins, stars Christopher Lee, Bela Lugosi, Julian Sands, and Guillermo del Toro. Well, that's quite a cast list.
Their voices.
Yeah. Hour and 13 minutes, trailer in the show notes. Spoiler free, it's an animated collection of Edgar Allan Poe tales with some very famous voice talent and interesting animation styles. What'd you think? You're the cartoon hater.
I am usually a cartoon hater, and I thoroughly enjoyed this.
Because you already knew the stories, or because you liked the way it looked?
I liked the way it looked. I thought the animation styles were very interesting. Each one was distinctly different. I thought the arc story with the Raven talking was a little so-so.
Filler.
Yeah, very fillery. But the individual stories, yeah, I thought they were very interesting. The one, each one has a distinct style.
What happens?
Well, we're not going to spoil the individual stories a whole lot. They're fairly straightforward retelling of some really famous stories by Poe.
You know Poe's stories by now. Vincent Price did most. Actually, I think he may have done all of these, and a lot of them have been done other times too.
And if you don't already know the Poe stories, then watch this film for a quick version of each. They're
kind of Cliff's Notes.
It is kind of a Cliff Note version of them, but they did really nice.
Yeah, for the first one, it's Christopher Lee is narrating, and I'm like, is this what was it? The Fall of the House of the Usher was the first one, and I'm like, is he just reading this? And I looked up the text, and there's a lot of it taken out of it, but it has been shortened and abridged. So these are not the full readings.
No, but they did a nice job with them. Well, in the wraparound story, a creepy, mysterious woman talks to a raven while visiting a cemetery. She says that the crow is obsessed with death, and he's a poet. Poe himself, even. And credits roll.
Yeah. So the interstitial story is the crow or the raven.
Who is Poe?
Who is Poe, supposedly, I guess.
Kind of reincarnated, and he doesn't fully remember who he is.
Yeah. Talking to the statue who was actually death.
Uh-huh.
So, what's our stories?
Well, The Fall of the House of Usher, which was narrated by Christopher Lee. A young man goes to visit his sickly old friend and his very strange sister in an even stranger crumbling old house. Could a curse be involved somehow?
It could be.
It could be. And I think what really made this was the eyes, and the way the eyes were so lively and so animated in this. The cartoons were kind of blocky, but the eyes were very lively. I don't know. I thought it was very interesting how they did it.
Okay, I did not pay particular attention to the eyes, but I did like the animation.
And then the other one is The Telltale Heart. Bele Lugosi narrates this one. It's a strange black and white telling about a young man, an old man, and a creepy vulture-like eye. Mayhem and guilt ensue.
It was the eye, I tell you.
And this was very much in the style of Sin City. It made me think of the Sin City animation.
Black and white,
harsh
with just a splash of red here and there.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. And the facts in the case of M. Voldemar. Julian Sands narrates this one, which is a tale of mesmerism and death. Can hypnosis prevent death, or does it just make it worse?
Certainly drags it out.
And we saw a movie that we talked about that had the full length of.
I think it was Twice Told Tales.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. The Pit and the Pendulum, narrated by, say his name.
Guillermo del Toro.
Thank you. The Inquisition sentences a man to death. There are rats and a pit involved.
And a pendulum.
Mm-hmm. Swinging pendulum. And The Mask of the Red Death, which wasn't really narrated, but features the voice of Roger Corman as Prince Prospero, a man who throws a lavish party at a bad time and comes to regret it when an unexpected guest arrives.
The voice of Roger Corman. I think he said like 4 words.
Yeah. Well, and back in the cemetery, the Raven wants to make sure his words will never be lost to time, and Death assures him that they won't be. And the Raven then flies off into the light.
Nope, those words will never be lost. They will, however, be abridged in cartoons.
Yes, and redone and retold. And yeah.
Well, these aren't full readings of the classic Poe stories. These are abridged and shortened versions, but the plots and the twists remain. There are long quotes from the source material at points, but a lot of the repetition and excess description has been cut out. Remember, these things were written in like the 1850s, and they do tend to get a little wordy.
And these are right to the point.
I mean, Poe, he's a classic, and he's great, but it's old, and it's a bit wordy.
A little wordy sometimes, yeah.
The animation style is quite interesting. The first segment looks like it's all computer-generated, but done in an exaggerated style with paper-like textures. Kind of look like wood carvings almost in some cases.
Kind of.
The second is entirely black and white with a few splashes of red, and you can guess where. The third looks a lot like pages from a comic book. It's got the little, what do you call the dot things?
Thought balloons.
No, the dots that they color in comic books with.
Oh, pixels? You mean
computer, they're pixels. Comic books, those little dots, they're dense dots for darker colors and spread out. There's a word for it.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, well. It's got them dot things.
Dot things.
The final story looks like an animated oil painting, and they're all very well done.
Mm-hmm.
I think my favorite is actually the Mask of the Red Death.
Yeah.
I like that one.
I think I might
agree
with
that. Very artistic looking. It was cool.
An oil painting brought to life.
Yeah. That was your favorite too, you think?
I think so, yeah.
Okay. Did we watch a short film?
We did. Crockpot from 2022. Directed and written by Ty Jones, also stars Ty Jones and Patrick Rhea. Runtime is 7 minutes, 58 seconds, and that's on YouTube, available to watch now.
Terror awaits a young couple as they fight about going to the young man's parents' house the next day for Thanksgiving. Do married couples ever fight about that?
Yeah.
Going to the in-laws for holidays?
Yeah, it's been known to happen.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
His mother bought her a crock pot so that she can complain about how the wife can't cook at the big dinner tomorrow. Ooh, a setup for failure.
Mm-hmm.
More than she knows.
Well, the worst monsters are also often quite the mother-in-laws of the world, but not always. In this case, yeah.
Yeah,
probably.
always.
Yeah. This short film is really good. The meal may not be great, but the film sure was good.
Yeah, stop on over and watch that one. Again, there's a link in the show notes. Hey, we had problems last week. We had some problems last week, and we had to put on a bonus short.
Mm-hmm.
What's this one?
This one is Witch Hunt from 2022 also. Lots of new ones that keep popping up. This is directed by Evan Gorski. Was it also written by Evan Gorski?
Probably. Or we decided not to credit the writer for some reason.
Blank here for some reason. Stars Tyler Steelman, Catherine McCafferty, and Josh Futcher. Future.
Don't want to say that one wrong.
Future.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it.
I think I'm going to go with that. Runtime is 8 minutes and 39 seconds and also available on YouTube.
A man photoshops a pair of men kissing and then threatens to tell one of the men's wives. Oh my, photoshopping.
Mm-hmm.
He then crosses the man's photo off from what appears to be a yearbook photo with a bunch of other faces crossed off.
The man has a hobby.
Yeah, it's not his first blackmail.
But
the doorbell rings and a woman passes out right into the man's arms. She's dirty, so she has to take a shower. Being the perv that he is, he peeks. Then someone else comes to the door, and things get weird.
Very weird.
Well, bullying has many forms, even in the time of the Salem witch trials. I can't say the ending was a particular surprise, but I was never quite sure of the way it was going to go. Very cool.
Yes, it was.
Yeah, it was neat.
Yeah, liked that one.
What else did we like?
Blobs. Beware the Blob.
No.
Okay. This is not Beware the Blob. That's right. That's another title.
We're going to get to the Beware the Blob next week. This is just the remake of the Blob.
But if you see the Blob, you should beware of it. Yes.
Yeah.
Anyway, this was the remake in The Blob in 1988, which was directed by Chuck Russell, written by Theodore Simonson, Kay Lineker, and Irvin H. Milgate. Stars Shawnee Smith, Kevin Dillon, and Donovan Leach. Runtime is 1 hour and 35 minutes, and there's a trailer in the show notes.
A lot of people call this just about the perfect remake.
I thought it was excellent. I saw it when it came out, and
yeah, I did too.
Saw it again some years ago, and saw it a third time here, and each time I thoroughly enjoyed it.
It takes all the cheesy, stupid, talky stuff from the first one and updates it, modernizes it. It takes the good stuff from the monster and updates and modernizes it.
Practical special effects.
Yeah, it all looks good. The acting is good. The story is good. Well, the first one is definitely considered a classic.
Mm-hmm.
This is better, though, to watch.
I thought so, yeah.
A true reboot of the 1958 original that follows the original story very closely. They even went with adults playing high schoolers again.
Yeah, there's that. Yeah.
There's two buttons that Kevin gets pushed all the time: cartoons that he hates, and high schoolers played by people in their 20s and 30s.
Mm-hmm.
Well, it's dialed up to 10 by comparison, though, with a lot more violence, gore, and scares. The practical effects still hold up really well, and overall, it's very entertaining. Yeah, we both like this one.
Yeah, we did.
Spoil it for us.
As credits roll, we see shots of what appears to be an abandoned town. And then we see it's abandoned because almost everyone is at the high school football game. Paul gets the winning touchdown while Meg is the cheerleader he likes. Elsewhere, Brian Flagg is a badass. We can tell because he throws a beer can into nature and rides off on his motorcycle. And he crashes because he's kind of a loser.
Okay, he wants to be a badass.
He does. He tries.
He tries awfully hard.
He tries so hard. Yeah. And Brian Flagg is was a character in the original, wasn't he? But here he's greatly expanded.
No.
No, he wasn't?
No.
They did add him for this. Okay.
It was just the boy and the girl and the three friends who were pretty much unnamed.
Okay.
I don't think there was a badass biker kind.
Yeah. Okay.
No.
So that's different from the original then. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, back in town, Sheriff Herb Geller and Fran Hewitt, the restaurant server, flirt and talk about when the tourists will show up for ski season soon.
It's ski season. You mean it gets cold in this town?
Uh-huh. Outside, Herb warns Brian that he's about to turn 18, 20s, and will be tried as an adult for his next infraction. Okay, so we're pretending that he's not 18 yet. Outside, then Brian talks to mechanic Moss about how the past few years hasn't had any snow and the town is nearly bankrupt. And we see, there's an exposition, little machine where he instantly cools some bottles of beverage.
Yeah.
He puts them in the it's basically a snow machine, and it goes psh, and hey, instant cold. And I was thinking, we're going to see that in use again later. Well, Brian borrows tools to fix his cycle. And then Scott, another football kid, goes to the drugstore to buy condoms, and the Reverend is right behind him in line. The Reverend and the druggist aren't at all judgmental, but Scott blames it all on Paul, who's just tagging along. He's not wanting the condoms.
Hey,
Scott
boy,
is,
what you buying these condoms for?
Well,
it's not for me. It's for Paul over there.
Yeah, and he buys ribbed. Well, it turns out the pharmacist is Meg's father, which goes awkwardly when Paul picks her up for their date.
Because the pharmacist thinks the condoms were for Paul, and Paul doesn't have any clue what was said.
Yeah. Well, out in the woods, a homeless man watches a meteorite crash nearby, very nearby. He goes to investigate and pokes the glowing rock with a stick, and something gooey comes out and gets on his hand. Brian runs into the man, who seems to be out of his mind in pain. Meg and Paul literally run into the crazy man on the street with Paul's car, and the trio drive the man to the hospital. Well, a bit later, Paul notices the man has been halfway eaten by the thing. Paul calls the sheriff and is almost immediately absorbed into the blob himself, leaving only an arm behind.
Oh, and I thought he was going to be the main character.
Yeah, surprise. The sheriff and Deputy Bill want to catch the perpetrator, and Brian is an easy target.
And then what do they think happened to the body if Brian did it?
Mm-hmm.
He left the arm there, but the body, there's no blood, there's no mess, just an arm.
And that's exactly what the sheriff says later. Like, this is, there's no way that he did this. We got to let him go. Well, Meg tries telling them what she saw, but no one really believes her. Scott and Vicky are making out in the car. He goes to get more drinks out of the trunk and doesn't see the blob crawl into the open door. Vicky appears to be asleep, so Scott unbuttons her blouse and finds there's something in there that he wasn't expecting. And the now much larger blob goes into the sewers and heads toward town. Dun, dun, dun. Well, the police interrogate Brian, and the sheriff realizes, like I said, he couldn't have done that to the homeless man or Paul, so they turn him loose. And Meg picks him up from the street outside. He doesn't believe her story either.
He kind of ought to, though.
Yeah. He saw the thing on the guy's hand. Well, Brian and Meg go to Fran's place for some food, and the sheriff heads over there for his late date with Fran. George, the dishwasher, works hard to unclog the sink. Something's plugging it. And then something really nasty comes up. And suddenly Brian and Fran are believers.
Did you ever see the dishwasher get sucked down the drain?
Yeah.
One of them 2-inch wide drains?
That's something.
It's chunky.
Yeah. Brian and Meg hide in the freezer, and the thing quickly retreats after trying to get under the door. Fran calls the sheriff's station from the payphone, and the blob engulfs the whole booth with her in it. Just before the end, she sees the sheriff inside the blob.
Too late for him.
Yeah. Reverend Meeker sees the blob slurp into the sewer again, and goes into the smashed-up diner to see if anyone needs help. And he finds a few pieces of frozen blob that broke off in the freezer threshold, glittering as crystals, which he puts into a jar. Meg and Brian go into the woods to find Deputy Bill, but they find government scientists and soldiers instead, led by the kindly Dr. Meadows. And he's just so nice. He's just like a huggable grandpa. I mean,
he's a good guy.
Yeah, and he's looking for killer germs from the meteor. This has been his life work. They're put under quarantine. Brian jumps out of the moving truck, but Meg goes along for the ride. Brian's just not trusting him, but Dr. Meadows is like, no, we want to keep everybody safe, and this is for your own good. And there could have been germs and things that came down in the meteor, and I want to save the world.
We've seen the crazies.
He's a good
Never
guy.
Trust the doctor in charge.
He's a good guy. Well, in town at the movie theater, Meg's brother and his friends are watching a Friday the 13th ripoff when the Blob oozes into the projection booth and kills the projectionist. Back in town, the government is rounding up everyone and putting them in quarantine. At the theater, things go haywire and there's a stampede. Meg and the two kids get out of the theater but end up having to flee down into the sewer.
Who does that?
Well, they had nowhere else to go.
Okay.
They were cornered and that was it. Down or, they were outrunning the Blob. Yeah. Well, Brian hides and watches the scientists who revealed that the meteor was actually an American satellite that contained biological samples. Dr. Meadows remarks how their little virus is all grown up now. This was a biological weapons test that has gotten out of hand. And he learns that Dr. Meadows isn't such a nice guy after all.
Oh, he's caused all this.
Yes, and capturing the creature alive is priority. The townspeople are expendable, he says.
What'd I just say? Never trust the scientists in charge.
Yeah, no matter how friendly Grandpa they seem. Yeah. Well, the Army decides that there are 3 main junctions in the sewers, and all they have to do is seal off the junctions and trap it down there. Easy peasy. Meg loses her little brother's friend to the monster, which is now gigantic. And she runs into Brian down there, and the two play tag with the Blob and military guys in the maze of sewers. They eventually get up onto the street. And then there's a standoff between Brian, Deputy Bill, and some of the military. Meadows tries telling Bill and the public standing around that Brian is infected and needs to be locked up. Well, Brian points out Dr. Meadows' lies that don't just add up. And just then the Blob tentacles up out of the sewer and eats Meadows in front of everybody.
Oh, never mind. He's dead now.
Everyone is believers now. Well, now they know the truth and the boss is dead, so the Army guys do what they can to kill the creature. A barrage of gunfire and explosions into the tunnel. And that takes care of the problem, right?
No.
Oh, nope. It only angers the Blob, which surges right up through the pavement and goes on a rampage down Main Street. Guns don't help. A flamethrower doesn't go well at all. Meg has to use a fire extinguisher on the Reverend and puts it together that the creature doesn't like the cold. She's using them CO2 cold extinguishers. And it didn't chase us into the freezer. Light bulb.
Ooh.
Reverend Maker is badly burned in the chaos and huddles, babbling about how this is the end time. It's all been prophesized.
I don't remember reading that part about the Blob.
The Blob.
Revelations. The Blob section.
The Blob,
yes.
Yeah. Brian goes back to Moss's garage and steals the snowmaking machine, starts hosing down the Blob with the frozen mix. And that does slow it down until it gets mad and flips the truck. Meg finds some explosives from a dying soldier, sets the timer to blow up the cold chemical tanks.
Because a high school student's going to know how to run a detonator and a timer and explosives.
You betcha.
Yeah.
Yeah, she read that in science class.
Cheerleading squad did that all the time.
Yeah. Well, when the bomb goes off, the creature is frozen solid into a pile of glittering crystals. And Meg and Brian embrace a happy ending. Except, sometime later, in summer, we see the scarred Reverend Meeker doing a tense sermon, warning the end is coming. And he still has a sample of the Blob in his jar, so he knows the end will be soon.
All he has to do is let it out.
That's right.
Well, it's a lot more violent than the 1958 original, that's for sure. It's faster moving and less talky than the original, but still mostly keeps to the same story outline.
Except Paul's not the main character.
Nope. It's an updated remake without being a reboot, reimagining, or anything stupid like that. It's just an updated retelling of the same basic story. About the only really new plot element is the biological warfare angle, but that really doesn't have a huge effect on the plot other than, 10 minutes of rounding up the neighbors.
But the basics are all there.
The creature here is much more lively this time around, with tentacles and arms rather than just being a blob of jelly. This was still in the age of practical effects, but it's much more effective than the original. Much higher budget this time around, and it's quite good.
Yeah, it was. The texture of the blob was different. Before it was like completely liquid runny. It could ooze through any small openings.
The first one was a lot like that slime that you buy in the toy stores.
And here
this one was
it's
much
more solid.
Yeah, it's much...
Yeah. It can't ooze through incredibly small.
Tentacles and stuff.
Yeah. Pseudopods and all that.
Yeah. But, what else we watch?
The Snowtown Murders from 2011. Directed
by Justin Kurzel, written by Sean Grant and Justin Kurzel and Debbie Marshall, stars Lucas Pittaway, Daniel Henshaw, and Louise Harris. Hour and 59 minutes, kind of a long one. Also just called Snowtown. I think it has been re-released as the Snowtown Murders. Mm-hmm. Could also be called the Snowtown, depending on where you're watching it.
Yeah.
Spoiler-free, what happens?
It's not strictly horror. It's ordinary people doing horrible things to kids and each other. And it is based on true events. It's very grim, very realistic, and not a happy movie, and it's hard to watch in places. But overall, a strong thumbs up.
Yeah, there's no, monsters or supernatural.
The monsters
in this one.
Are people.
Yeah, it's the real kind of monsters.
It's all real. Yeah. Cringy real. Yeah. Shuddery real.
We hear a voiceover about Jamie, the narrator, having a dream about finding a man in his living room with his throat cut. Inside the man's slit throat is a chihuahua that yaps at him. And that's kind of a weird image.
It is.
It doesn't have anything to do with the rest of the movie, but it's a weird image. Jeffrey asks Elizabeth out on a date. She asks him to watch Jamie and the little kids tomorrow since she has to go see her ex-husband. Jeffrey, who lives right across the street from them, takes photos of all the kids in their underwear, except for Jamie, who has to do it naked. The next day, Barry comes over to see Elizabeth, and he's very creepy. We don't see why he's come to the house. Later, Elizabeth just seems to know what Jeffrey did and beats him up as the boys watch silently.
And that's why he was there, he told her.
Yeah. How he knows, we don't know. I guess Jeffrey was bragging.
Yeah, probably.
She calls the police, and then they all go to church. So yeah, old Jeffrey was a pedophile. Mm-hmm. Or maybe not a pedophile, child pornographer.
Yeah, we don't know.
We didn't see that he did
we
anything.
Don't know
just took pictures.
It was more than pictures, but yeah, that's creepy enough.
I sort of got the impression it was just pictures.
We didn't see anything other
we do see things later.
We do,
but not with Jeffrey.
But not with him,
yeah.
Right.
Well, the next morning, someone new, John, makes breakfast for everyone after dealing with Jeffrey the night before. He gives them all a ride on his motorcycle and then buys everyone ice cream later. John gets the kids to vandalize Jeffrey's home, and John and his friend Rob are very anti-pedo, and they seem to deal with this problem on a regular basis from various offenders. So they're like, hey, you know a pedophile? Call us. We'll beat him up.
Mm-hmm.
Rent a goon?
Yeah, I guess. Yeah.
Well, the next morning, John is in the yard cutting up kangaroos with an axe. Oh, did we mention this was Australian?
Yeah, this is Australian.
Could that be anything more Australian? Well, they mash up the bits and pieces and then pour it all over Jeffrey's porch. Not long after, they watch Jeffrey pack up and move away. Yep, that worked.
Yeah, it did.
John teaches Jamie how to ride the motorcycle by himself, and Jamie's older brother Troy still picks on him, which quickly escalates into Troy raping Jamie.
And that was another one of those what moments that just escalated so quickly.
It's okay, they're brothers.
We're just having fun until they weren't.
Yeah, they didn't. At no point did it look like anybody was having fun.
No, not well initially. Yeah.
Well, Barry tells John about all the perverts in town, and John takes notes. Yeah, Barry at this point is a cross-dressing man. He's a pretty ugly dude, really. Wearing a dress and earrings, and he's very effeminate. Did he say he was gay or just a cross-dresser? He did ring a guy there. So he was dating a guy at one point. And it seems like he's a friend of the family. He fits right in. They more or less accepted him in the previous scenes, right?
Yeah, he's just eccentric, and they didn't seem to have any problem with it.
Well, that changes real fast for some reason.
Well, and that's the problem of the morality of this is it gets a little bit gray because
it does.
Here's these, John and his friends who are going after pedophiles. Okay, pedophile is obviously bad, and they need to be brought before justice, before the law. They're taking the law into their old hands. So and so says that this man is a pedophile, so they go after this man. Was he really? Was the kids lying? There's a lot of gray area there. And as we see later with more of their victims, they get more and more carried away.
Less and less discriminating.
Less and less obvious that these are men who deserve to be severely punished when they're judge, jury, executioner.
John and Jamie gets their heads shaved. Jamie stays over at John's house, and we see that John has a crazy wall. Lots of pictures and names.
Mm-hmm. Taking notes.
John knows what's been going on with Troy and gives Jamie a gun. John tells Jamie to shoot John's dog right there in the kitchen. Yes, John tells Jamie to shoot his dog. Shoot, here's a gun. Shoot my dog.
Yeah.
Here's the dog I'll watch right now.
Not too emotionally attached to that dog, I guess.
Jamie's not too happy to kill the dog, but he does as he told and shoots the dog in the kitchen.
And then John gets a new dog later.
Yeah. Well, we hear an answering machine message that Barry has left town for a while. John's watching Ray, a guy who flashes children at a bus stop. Jamie tags along to learn the ropes, and Jamie hangs out with his friend Gavin and jokes about the bomb shelter that John is digging in the backyard. Yeah, a couple of guys are digging this big hole.
Mm-hmm.
Elizabeth gets upset when she finds her bathroom is all bloody. We hear Ray leaving a voice message saying that he's leaving town.
A lot of people leaving messages that they're leaving town.
Flashers and strange people all leaving town, yeah.
Huh.
Well, there's lots of pervy people leaving voice messages about leaving town, never to be seen again. Elizabeth and John have a fight, and Jamie warns her not to mess things up. Marcus is Elizabeth's ex and the boy's father. His friend is Dave. Are they a couple? We are never really clear on that one.
It was questionable.
A
little bit.
Well,
but that's the thing.
It seems like a couple until at the end, Dave says he has a girlfriend.
Yeah.
It's confusing.
Yeah, and I think that was deliberately left unclear.
Yeah. John takes Jamie out to the barn and shows him a dead body. It's Jamie's smoking buddy, Gavin. He's also got Barry in there, his dead body, too. They're hiding them in 55-gallon drums. Jamie gets upset and pukes. John, Robert, and Jamie pack up Gavin's stuff and paint his car a different color. Later, John and Robert torture Troy as Jamie watches.
That's the big brother.
They torture him until he leaves a voice recording that says he's leaving town too. Then they strangle him, somewhat repeatedly, excessively. Eventually, Jamie finishes the job for him. Good boy, says John. Afterward, they all go out to dinner. Jamie tells Elizabeth that Troy left over money, but he doesn't know where he went. Now we see where these people have been going.
Plus, she's got his voicemail, so yeah.
Can't call him a missing person. He left. You got the message to prove it.
Yeah.
We get a murder montage where we see that John, Jamie, and Robert kill several more people. Jamie even impersonates one of them, Fred, at his doctor's office. He then gets Fred signed up for government assistance checks. They kill the guy and then get him signed up for welfare. Guess who's getting them checks?
Yeah, John.
John finds Gary, a kid that Jamie knows is a harmless spastic. Jamie shows the boys his snake that eats rats. Later, John finds Jamie high on heroin, passed out in the car. Their fourth accomplice, Mark, admits that he was high and mentioned something about killing men to his girlfriend, Verna. John warns Jamie to get off the drugs. The people they kill aren't even noticed, so why get so upset?
And I think it was the kid, Jamie, was where I really...
Gary, you mean? Jamie's the main character.
Oh,
Gary's
right. Yes, Gary.
Just
the kid with
spastic
the snakes.
Kid, supposedly, yeah.
That's where I began to really question, they're just...
He was weird, but we didn't see any evidence that he was doing anything.
People they see as misfits or, and, maybe just gay, maybe just weird, maybe just, getting carried away with their, quote, justice.
Barry, the cross-dressing gay man, as far as we know, he wasn't doing anything illegal, anything wrong.
There was no indication he was into anything but adult men.
Yeah, which is odd for John or somebody like that. That definitely doesn't fit in, but it's no crime. But it was
the kid with the snakes where I really realized, they're kind of getting carried away here.
Yeah. Well, Elizabeth knows something is amiss and sends her two youngest sons to stay with their father. John plays the recording of Verna leaving town for Jamie. Not long after, John, Robert, Jamie, and Mark carry concrete into an old building. This is where they stash the bodies. Mark doesn't leave with them. Yep, loose lips.
Yeah.
Jamie tells his dad's friend Dave that he wants to sell him a computer. They spend the day together, but they go to the building where the bodies are stashed. John and Robert are there waiting for them. Okay. And the screen goes black. On May 20th, where a text comes on the screen next, telling us on May 20th, 1999, police located human remains inside barrels at a disused bank in Snowtown, South Australia. 2 more bodies were later found buried in the backyard of 203 Waterloo Corner Road. On May 21st, 1999, several arrests were made. John Bunting turns out to be Australia's worst serial killer with 11 murders. 11?
Only 11?
Small-timers down there.
Yeah.
Jamie ended up doing a plea deal and got a life sentence. He might be released in 2025 on parole.
So, based on true events and true
story,
people.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, last week we crossed Africa off our list of vacation definitions after watching Saloom from last year. And this week, Australia's off the list as well.
Yeah, these movies managed to not make these places look fun.
These are not travelogues.
They show the worst. Well, and this is a very poor area they're living in. Was there anything green? Did we ever see green? It was just all dirt and rocks and poverty and despair.
An awful lot of Australia is desert and, that kind of area.
Yeah, but, it didn't make it look fun.
Well, the interesting part is that John is really good with the little kids. He's probably the best father figure they've ever had. Yeah, in the beginning, he seemed like a good guy, much improved over some of the people they had otherwise. Jamie rarely speaks, which gives him a very psychotic creep factor, even though he seems to start out as an innocent kid. It's not really all that gory, but Jamie's reactions often show how horrifying the scene is, even if we don't get to see all the bloody details.
We get to see some.
Oh, yeah, there's some.
But not all.
I'm not quite clear on what David's crime was, or Gary's either. At first, he thought he was the dad's boyfriend, but later on, we hear that that's not the case. He was talking about his girlfriend. Well, Jamie asked him, do you have a girlfriend? And he said yes. I suppose that could have been a generic lie.
Yeah, it could have.
Yeah. Well, it's pretty twisted. The acting is good. The camera work is great. Everything looks cheap and dirty, but also very realistic. Actually, that's probably the best part of the film, that it feels so bleak and realistic. And this is exactly the way something like this would probably actually happen.
Yeah.
Considering it's based on a true story.
Well, that it did happen.
It did happen, yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Is that horror? I guess it probably is.
I think it counts.
Yeah, it definitely gives you something to think about afterwards.
Yeah.
All right. Well, tune in next week where we are going to have some more stuff. Anything good next week?
We don't know.
We're going to watch Beware of the Blob.
Oh.
The 1972 somewhat sequel to the first one.
Yeah.
We're going to watch Carrie, the crazy psycho prom girl.
Creepy Carrie. Ugh.
Maniac.
Oh, yeah.
Not the one from the 70s. This is the one with Frodo Baggins.
Elijah Wood, yeah.
Or is he the guy that was in Harry Potter?
Yeah.
No, they're all the same, aren't they?
No. Well, same demographic, but no, not the same guy.
He's a maniac. On the phone. Yeah. Is it on the floor or on the phone?
On the floor. She's dancing. She's dancing like she's never danced before.
Oh, yeah. It's been a long time since I heard that song.
Before and floor rhymes.
Poltergeist, 1982. Spielberg has hit horror guys.
Classics.
And, of course, a short film called Smile.
Okay.
Not to be confused with the feature film Smile that is coming soon or is been released or whatever.
I've seen previews for it.
Does it look good? I haven't seen anything yet.
I thought it looked thoroughly creepy. Yeah.
Well, I'm sure we'll watch that one at some point.
We should see that someday.
All right. And, of course, sign up for horrorbulletin.com and get the bonus newsletters. And, of course, buy the books. What? Did you hear that subliminal something or other?
I did. It was very subtle.
Buy the books. Well, if you wanted to buy some books, you could go to horrorguys.com/books. Buy the books. And in the meantime, we'll see you next week.
See ya.